Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. My name is Miriam. I love reading and I love Victorian literature, and I'm very excited to be sharing with you all my pile of possibilities for my favorite readathon of the year, Victober. For those of you who have been here for a while, you may notice I have different shelves behind me and it is a new bookcase. I hope to film a video with some other fall reading plans, possibilities for the fall season separate from Victober. And in that video, I will share some footage of the new shelves and the fall decor in my room as well, and my other bookshelves that you normally see behind me. So look out for that video. Hopefully beginning of October is when I'll get it out. It's just been such a busy month. And for those of you who have been around for a while, I have had a very sporadic uploading schedule and I appreciate each of you for still being here, and it's just been wild. September was crazy, just as crazy as summer was, and my sister actually just got married. I got really sick. My voice still isn't fully back to normal, so I'm getting better. The wedding is over and I can kind of breathe now, so hopefully more videos will be coming out in October, November, and December. That is the goal, but thank you all for still being here. And we're just going to get into my pile of possibilities for Victober. It's a yearly readathon where you read and celebrate Victorian literature, and I love Victorian classics so much. And this is a special readathon. I do believe it's the 10th year that they have held it, and the main host is Katie from Books and Things. I'll have her channel linked below, as well as all the other co-hosts. And another difference from the previous years is that there are 10 hosts this year instead of 5, which is the normal number. And there are usually 5 prompts, but this year there will be 10 prompts for the readathon. So I do have some books picked out that fit each prompt, and I guess we'll see how the month goes. I don't want to pressure myself to read a certain number of books. If I get to even a few, I will be more than happy to have read even a couple Victorian books in October. Just with how this year has gone, I'm hopeful it'll be better in October and I'll have more reading time, but we shall see how it goes. So we're just gonna get into it. I have a few books that are must reads. They are books I am planning to either buddy read or just books that I really want to get read in the month of October. So we'll go over those, and then I'll go over each prompt and see what else can fit for those prompts. The prompts and co-hosts are all linked in the description box below, so all the information for Victober is below. And we're gonna start off with a few buddy reads. First, we have The Claverings by Anthony Trollope, and this is one of his standalone novels. I plan on buddy reading this with my friend Madeline from Cozy Cottage Chapters, and I've heard amazing things about this one. And it is a little on the longer side. It's almost 500 pages, but I find Anthony Trollope to be very readable and not at all dense compared to other writers. So I'm really excited for this one, and I won't read the full summary because there are usually spoilers, and I really don't like knowing too much before going into Victorian classics. But it says, never far from the plot are exciting contemporary developments, the building of the London Underground, and the plans for the first great railway in Russia. Against this backdrop, Trollope deploys masterly realism and Victorian moral sense in portraying the anguish of making choices in both profession and marriage, which seems to be pretty common in Trollope's novels. Professions, vocations, marriage, those kinds of themes. So I'm intrigued, I'm curious, and I'm looking forward to the buddy read with Madeline. I also plan on rereading North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell with a friend, Brandy, who has a Bookstagram account, and I'll link that below. And she has never read North and South. I don't believe she's read Gaskell at all. And it's been a few years since I've read this one, and I really want to reread it. North and South is one of my favorite books of all time. Very excited to reread this one. It is such an amazing book, and I'm excited to also rewatch the 2004 miniseries. But North and South, it is one of the best places to start with Victorian literature if you've never read any books set in this time period or written during this time period in particular. It is accessible, it has amazing characters, amazing themes, and I'm just so excited for this reread. So that is the second buddy read. The next book is not for a buddy read, but is for a reading challenge. My friend Anne from In Search of Wonder has her classics reading challenge, the Read the Classics challenge that she has throughout this entire year, and every month is a different prompt. And for the month of October, it is to read a sci-fi or time travel novel, and it has a few scavenger hunt items to look out for in the book, and those are a sailing vessel, time machine, and mad scientist. I do believe at least 2 of those 3 will be found in this book, which is The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. I've never read H.G. Wells. This is the only one that I own, and I am really intrigued by it. So The Island of Dr. Moreau is a must read for me, and it is on the shorter side as well. So I do think I'll get through it pretty quickly. And it was published at the tail end of the Victorian era, and I've not read very much sci-fi written, I guess, not in contemporary times. So I'm really, really intrigued. Just sci-fi in general, I don't read much of, but I really enjoyed the series, and I'm blanking, I think it's the Athena Club series, and the first book is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. And she took a bunch of characters from different Victorian literature, Gothic, sci-fi, and mystery, like Sherlock Holmes, some of H.G. Wells' characters, that sort of thing. And she created characters that are kind of like the next generation. And it's just such a fun series inspired by all these great Gothic and sci-fi classics. And I am really intrigued to read The Island of Dr. Moreau, as one of the characters is the daughter of Dr. Moreau in The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. So I'm intrigued. I'm really, really curious to see what I think. And yeah, it'll be my first H.G. Wells. That is one that I'm really, really hoping to get to, and I hope that I really love it. I also really want to start the biography on Elizabeth Gaskell by Jenny Uglow. It's not a Victorian classic. It was written in, I think, the 90s. Yes, 1993. And it's the main biography on Gaskell, who is my favorite Victorian writer. So I really want to at least get this started for Victober. And I don't really care how long it takes me to read it. I just want to get it started and at least read a good few chapters by the end of the month. And yeah, I just want to learn more about my favorite writer, and I think this will be a fantastic read. So that is a priority as well, at least to get it started. Okay, so we'll go over the prompts, and the first thing I wanted to mention is the group read for Victober, and that is Hester by Margaret Oliphant. I am really intrigued by this. I got it last year and had hoped to read it for Victober last year, but didn't get around to it. So that is no problem. I'm glad it is the group read this year. And I won't go over the synopses of any of these books, or we'll be here for a while, but I am really intrigued. I've wanted to read from this author for a while. I really want to read the Chronicles of Carlingford series that she wrote, which she's very, very well known for, that series. I just haven't gotten around to starting it yet, but I am excited to start with a standalone, see what I think, and then we'll go from there. But I'm really intrigued by this author, and I know that Elizabeth from A Literary Princess, she loves Margaret Oliphant, and every time she talks about her stories, I want to read them so bad. So I am very, very excited about this book, and I'm glad it's the group read. So this is also a must read for Victober. Now we'll go over all the prompts, and each of the 10 hosts for Victober, they picked their own prompt. So I'll just mention their name and then what the prompt is. And of course, all their channels are linked below. I believe one of them just has a Bookstagram account, but everything will be in the description box. And the first challenge is Kate's challenge, which is to read a Victorian book in which friendship is featured. Now, many of the books that I mentioned throughout the rest of the video could probably fit various prompts, but I'm just going to mention the books that I kind of immediately thought of or I have heard fit each of the challenges. So I will try to meet all 10, and maybe I'll have to double up. We'll see. For this challenge, my mind immediately went to Margaret and Mr. Higgins and his daughter in North and South. I'm reading this book anyway, and it has a beautiful friendship, a couple very beautiful friendships portrayed. So this book would work perfectly. And when Kate shared some recommendations for her challenge, she did mention The Stokesley Secret by Charlotte Mary Young, and I do want to read more Charlotte Mary Young as well. I am really, really enjoying getting into her works, and she's a lesser known Victorian writer as well. So she recommended The Stokesley Secret. I do believe it's on the shorter side, so that might be a good option for this prompt as well, but we shall see if I get to it. Either way, North and South definitely does feature friendship, so this is a good pick for that one. When I think about friendship within Victorian literature, I often think about Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and I have read the entirety of the Sherlock canon. A few years ago, I finished the entire canon, and then I restarted from the beginning, which is A Study in Scarlet, and that was last October. And I had meant to just continue throughout the rest of the fall and into this year, just continuing throughout the entire Sherlock Holmes canon by Arthur Conan Doyle, and I just didn't get around to it. So I'm thinking of reading The Sign of the Four. This collection has both the first and second stories within this canon. And Sherlock and Watson are an iconic duo. I do think they exemplify friendship in many ways, and so I think this would be a great option for the friendship prompt as well. So The Sign of the Four is a definite option, and like I said, this has both, and they're very short. They're more like novella length, but that is an option. Then we have Katie's challenge, which is to read a work of Victorian literature that is not a novel. So it could be a play, a short story, poem, or work of nonfiction. There are several possibilities that I have for this prompt. I did start the major works of Tennyson, I think last year, and I've been slowly making my way through it. So I might read a few of his poems, just dip in and out of, and Tennyson is quintessentially Victorian. So this would be good to just kind of, read a few poems from throughout the month of October. And I've been really enjoying just taking my time with this, picking it up when the mood strikes, and I do really love Tennyson's poetry, so that is an option. I also have a few short story collections that work. I have started already Selected Stories by Thomas Hardy. I've read the first couple of the 7 short stories that there are, so I will try to finish this in October, and it works for this prompt. I also have a couple short story collections by Elizabeth Gaskell. We have Cousin Phyllis and Other Stories and Gothic Tales. I really want to read at least a few out of the Gothic Tales collection, if not the entire thing, because in October another readathon is being hosted by my friend Sarah, and I'll have her channel linked below and the readathon announcement, and it is called Gothtober. So there is crossover between Gothtober and Victober, and as the title suggests, this is Gothic Tales, so this is perfect for both readathons. The short stories in Gothic Tales are The Old Nurse's Story, which I have already read and really enjoyed that one, The Squire's Story, The Poor Clare, The Doom of the Griffiths, Lois the Witch, The Crooked Branch, Curious If True, and The Grey Woman. And then in Cousin Phyllis and Other Stories, we have Lizzie Lee, Morton Hall, The French Master, Half a Lifetime Ago, The Manchester Marriage, which I have read, and Cousin Phyllis. So those are a couple options as well. The third challenge is Marissa's challenge, which is to read a work of Victorian literature where a character experiences a change in class status. So thinking social mobility, rags to riches, the fallen woman, etc. When Marissa shared her recommendations, she did mention that the group read Hester works for this prompt. Other books that I've mentioned also work, like North and South, so I'm sure at least one of the books I read in October will fit this prompt, where there is some social climbing or decline, if you will, but we shall see what I end up reading. The fourth prompt is really fun. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt, and that is Roz's challenge, which is empire spotting. See how many times you can spot signs of the empire in your Victober reading. My mind immediately went to Rudyard Kipling, who wrote different books set in India. So we have British India. That's a more obvious kind of book to read that is very, very clearly, it screams British Empire, but there are other elements as well that speak to the British Empire. So as Roz mentioned, I will treat it as a scavenger hunt and see what I end up finding. The fifth prompt is Elizabeth's challenge, and that is to read a work by an underrated Victorian woman writer. I think Margaret Oliphant is quite underrated, so Hester would count, and I also think Charlotte Mary Young counts. So I did mention The Stokesley Secret. There are many other books by Charlotte Mary Young I would love to read. I've also really wanted to read Love and Life. I know some of my booktube friends read that earlier this year. I think it was Love and Life, and they loved it, and I really, really want to get to it. I did not have a chance to read it, so I'm not sure if I'll get to anything by Charlotte Mary Young, but those are kind of the two that I'm thinking of. At number 6, we have Hannah's challenge, which is to read a Victorian work that discusses education. I feel like North and South can be used to tick off so many of the prompts. In North and South, Margaret's father, Mr. Hale, he does take on kind of like a tutor role to Mr. Thornton, and that would definitely work. So there is some aspects of education in North and South, maybe not like traditional education, but there are elements in that book. I did want to read something specifically for this prompt, and I'm thinking of reading Dr. Wardle's School by Anthony Trollope. It's one of his shorter works, and I've heard fantastic things about this one. And all I know is Dr. Wardle owns or runs a private school. It says it was published a year before Trollope passed away, and in its unusually outspoken condemnation of contemporary codes of conduct, it's a fascinating exception to his earlier fiction. So that sounds interesting, and it has to do with education, so this is definitely an option. I've been really eager to read something by George Eliot. I did read Silas Marner a few years ago, and it wasn't my favorite book, to be completely honest, but I do want to reread it again at some point. I do think, each time you read a book, it's a different version of you reading that book, so I may enjoy it a second time. And I did try reading Middlemarch this year, and it was just not the right time. So I'm thinking of maybe trying The Mill on the Floss. This one I've heard also deals with education in some way, so I don't know if it'll be one that I get to at all. I have no idea. I just did some research on Victorian literature that features, education in some way, and this book came up, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'll enjoy it. I am really intimidated by George Eliot. I find myself so nervous to try her works. I have Daniel Deronda, I have The Mill on the Floss, I have Romola, I have Adam Bede, and I've been so, like, I want to pick them up, but I'm so nervous to read them just because I didn't have the best experience with Silas Marner, and Middlemarch, I barely got past the first few chapters. I don't know. We shall see, but this is an option, and let me know if you think I would enjoy it. If you know my reading tastes, if you've been here for a while, please do let me know what you think. Number 7 is Jess's challenge, and that is to step back in time and read a Victorian work set in a different era. I think Jess had some recommendations. I can't remember if I wrote them down because she shared the recommendations or not, but I did write down a couple titles. I believe the short story from Elizabeth Gaskell's Cousin Phyllis and Other Stories collection, Lizzie Lee, I do believe that's set in a different time prior to the Victorian era. I just don't know when exactly. Actually, it looks like more than one of the stories in here might be set in a different time. I think Morton Hall as well. So I guess if I read this collection, I will tick off that challenge. But I also thought of another book that I have, and that is Lorna Doone by R.D. Blackmore. I don't really know anything about it other than it's set in the 17th century. So it is quite long, so I don't know if I'll get to it, but it is set a few hundred years before the Victorian era. It's set in the 1600s, so we shall see, but that is an option. Then we have number 8, which is Milena's challenge, and that is to spin a digital color wheel and pick a Victorian book with a cover that primarily features that color. And you can pick any edition. I'm going to screen record, and hopefully it gives me an easy color where it's very easy to find a cover with it, but let us see what we get. Okay, so spin. Oh, okay, it's yellow. Interesting. Yellow is not always the easiest color to find, but let me see if any of the books I've mentioned already in this video have yellow on the cover. Okay, so I have a couple options here. It's a stretch, but Cousin Phyllis does have yellow on the cover. There are yellow flowers. I know it's to find a book where it's the main color on the cover, but I don't own anything else, I don't think, where yellow is the primary color, and I want to read that book for Victober, so this is an option. It's not that deep, it's just a challenge, but I think this counts. And it's not really yellow, but I think this does count. At least the lake, the reflection of the sun in the lake kind of gives off yellow. So this counts too, in my eyes at least. Then Roy's challenge is to read a Victorian work of fantasy. And I had a harder time with this one just because I don't read a lot of fantasy in general, but I do enjoy it. I just don't read a lot of it. And I don't own really any Victorian fantasy except for one book. It was first published in the 1870s by the Scottish writer George MacDonald, and that is The Princess and the Goblin. And this is basically the only Victorian fantasy novel that I own, so it's the main option. And The Island of Dr. Moreau, it's more sci-fi, but I would count it personally. Science fiction and fantasy go together hand in hand in my eyes, so if I don't get to The Princess and the Goblin, this is what I will count towards this prompt. But this is a book that I've been wanting to read for a while. I did pick it up, I think last year, and had to temporarily set it aside. It just wasn't working for me at the time, but I think fall is a perfect time for a cozy children's fantasy story. So this is an option as well. And it was written in the Victorian era, which is perfect. And last but not least, at number 10, we have Catherine's challenge. And that is to read a Victorian book that has a connection to Jane Austen. And in her recommendations video, she basically said it's very loose. You can kind of make it work the way you want to make it work, but she did recommend North and South. Many people connect North and South to Pride and Prejudice in some of the themes. They're very dissimilar in many ways, but there are similarities at the same time. In particular, the rough start to the relationships between Margaret Hale and Mr. Thornton in this book, and Elizabeth and Darcy in Pride and Prejudice, but this is the book that I plan on reading for this prompt. If I can figure out how any of the other books I've mentioned fits or connects to Jane Austen in any way, I will mention it, but in my wrap up, I guess, but this is the main book that I plan on reading for that prompt. And then there is a bingo board or like a graphic that I will insert here. It was created by one of the hosts, and it's just a fun way to kind of keep track of everything that you're reading. So that is a really fun little addition to this readathon. And then for the 4 challenges, they have kind of just for fun, different levels that you can achieve. If you complete 1 to 3 prompts, you are at the Mr. Macabre level. If you complete 4 to 6 challenges, you're at the Jane Eyre level. If you complete 7 to 9, you are at the Sherlock Holmes level. And if you complete all 10, you are at the Dracula level. So I would love to at least make it to the Sherlock level. I will be very happy with that. And I guess we'll just see how the month goes. I want it to be as laid back and stress-free as possible. I don't want a lot of pressure on myself, but I do want to enjoy as many Victorian books as I can. So friends, these are the books that are on my, I guess, possibility pile for Victober. I will not get to everything, but I miss the days where I could read this much in a month. Those days are no more, but I will attempt to get to a good chunk of these books. And I also have some Charlotte Mary Young books that I don't own physical copies of, but I can read through Project Gutenberg. So those are some possibilities as well. And if any of these books are books you've read, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please do let me know what you thought of the books, and I guess it'll help me pick and choose which are the bigger priorities, besides the ones that I really, really want to get to. Some of the other ones, I'm not sure I will get to them, but you may be able to help convince me of the ones to prioritize. But friends, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, for being here. And if you do plan on participating in Victober, I would love to know what books you want to read for the readathon. What are your priorities as well, if you are participating, of course. And as well as any Victober adjacent books, Victorian adjacent, if you will, books that are set in the Victorian era but may not have been written in the Victorian era. Those are also fun to read during this readathon, just to celebrate this time period and fully enjoy it. And I'm hoping to do that as well. So friends, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.